Right. So let me try. I could make it big here. Somehow. All right. Yes. So what we see in here is what John had in vision in the judgment in Revelation 4.
Mm-hmm.
He saw on the throne, he saw the lamb on the sheer glass, he saw the 24 elders and the four beasts. And well, we want to see all the angels around the throne as the witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
This is the judgment scene to decide who will remain, whose name will remain in the book and whose name will be blotted out. This is what started in 1844 on behalf of the dead.
Mm.
4 beasts here represent the defendants. So you will have the starting point of that. One beast was like a lion. So that will take us from Adam to the period of the calf, which will bring in the period of sacrificial offering.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the calf, it will bring you to the face of the man, which is the Christian dispensation. Because after these sacrifices ended with Christ as the high priest in heaven, right? So this brings us to the Christian dispensation. And the beast as the eagle will represent the church for translation, the church during the time of the Lord Christ. All of these had to stand before God's throne. You must be judged first and accounted worthy for your name to be retained in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's a statement that says, blessed are they which die in the Lord from henceforth. So what happened in 1844? All those who die after 1844, believing the truth, will be resurrected in the partial resurrection. You understand what the partial resurrection?
Mm.
Daniel 12, 2 classes of people coming up in that resurrection. Some will turn many to righteousness, and some will come up for shame and everlasting contempt.
Mm.
So all who die faithful, believing the 3-angel message, keeping the Sabbath, will come up in this resurrection to see Christ coming in the cloud. Because remember, he said, blessed are they that die in the Lord from henceforth. All right.
Mm.
And according to Daniel 12, he says, blessed are they that come to 1,355 days. So from 508 to 1844, 18 will bring you to 1,235 days. 2,335 days or years. So it was a blessing pronounced upon anyone who comes to that time. What is the blessing? Those who die faithful in Christ, believe in the Sabbath, will come up in the partial resurrection to see Christ coming in the cloud.
Mm.
But what happened here now? When the message moved on from the judgment of the dead to the judgment of the living, many reject.
Mm.
And this is where trouble starts. In Luke 14, at supper time, according to Luke 14, the master sent a call telling him now all things are now ready.
Right.
And what they did, they all made an excuse. Till he had to say, none of those men that were bidden will taste of my supper.
Right.
So what happened then? When the message of the judgment of the living came in 1930, because remember at that time, like I said before, the world was brought under a curse because we had allowed the womb to be healed.
Right.
All right, so the Lord now gave us a chance. Come now, all things are ready. Call for supper. But as Seventh Adventists, we rejected the call.
Mm.
So those who reject the call, he said they cannot taste of his supper. What that means? Only those who qualify will go into him the supper. The balance will not be able to. It means that you close your probation. So what is happening here? As we enter the service of God, we will be tested. Our attitude and stand will decide our destiny. 1930 brings on a different period for us today. In other words, it have no time for you to be palavering on the bank, as we call it, and in the river and so on. You must make a decided decision whether you will follow God or not.
Right.
So what happens? One closes the probation at the moment they reject the heaven sent message, which is the message of the judgment for the living. So that is why at this present time, although you have so many people in the world or in the church, he can't get 144,000 yet. Because the majority of us doesn't qualify.
Right.
You realize how serious this is?
Oh, yeah.
That is why it's only 144,000 John saw standing with Lamb and Mount Zion. And now what makes matters worse is we feel this is here and everything. He have to rise up from his ministerial work in the sanctuary. This is when he's going to surprise the hypocrites at the unholy feast. All those who saying no worship, no feast days, will be surprised at their unholy feast. I want us to look at it from another angle. I'll bring up the agricultural year. Because remember, God brings his truth from different angles. Let me change this here. Right. So now, I put it up on the screen. So we will make some sense of what we're saying here. Oh, is here already, man? Okay. You have the agricultural year.
Make it a little bit smaller.
We get that like that. I may have to move back the camera a bit. I don't know how I get that, so. Talk to me.
That's good. Good.
Right.
Perfect.
Right. Israel had a year for farming. You normally plant in the autumn after you reap the harvest. You will plant back around that same time. Then you will have the winter will come on. And in the spring, you will have a first harvest. The barley normally would have been the first ripened grain in the spring. And then you go down, then you will have Pentecost. At that time, you will have the first fruit harvest come to full maturity. So you have a special ceremony, which we call at Pentecost. Right. After that, in the 7th month, you will have the general harvest of all the crop for the year. What does that tell us? God used the season of planting to represent souls that will be gathered or souls that will be saved.
Mm-hmm.
in 2 harvests. So what you have, according to the Leviticus, you have 2 literal harvests and 3 spiritual sacraments.
Right.
Right. So what am I saying? The first harvest, remember, according to the scripture, say the 144,000 the first fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is the harvest for the first month, for the spring.
Right.
And the second harvest will be the great multitude which no man could number.
Mm.
These are from Leviticus 23.
Right.
But yet we say, all that end on the cross. So if it end on the cross, why is Christ using it to show how saints will be gathered? You want to explain that?
Well, we could use one of the parables in reference to the seeds finding the truth or finding the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Some fell on stony ground, some fell on good earth, some fell in shallow soil,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. This is also referencing plants or seeds being sown
Right.
for a harvest.
Right.
Some survived to the end, and then some fell away, some, just whatever. But
Right.
we see in these examples, it's pointing towards a harvest at the end.
Right. Now, we agree according to Matthew that the Son of Man sowed the good seed.
Mm-hmm.
Christ himself gave that parable.
Right.
The seed sowing time is when he was here on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the gospel period is likened unto a year.
Mm-hmm.
One physical year.
Right.
Now, in the type, in the spring, you have a first harvest. First, you have to get a wave, one sheaf, wave it before the Lord, pointing forward to the harvest to come.
Mm-hmm.
We all know or we agree that the waving of the wave sheaf pointed to Christ's resurrection.
Mm.
And it happened exactly as that when he died.
Mm.
At the same time they were supposed to wave the wave sheaf, that's the time Christ resurrected.
Right.
So he is the antitype of the wave sheaf and those who rode with him.
Right.
After you offer the wave sheaf, you're supposed to come 7 Sabbaths and you offer a new meat, meat offering
Mm-hmm.
with 2 wave loaves,
Right.
which was to show a finished product.
Mm-hmm.
So you would take the barley, make bread, and you present that to the Lord. This was pointing now to the full complement of the wave loaves, those who were saved under the first fruit harvest, which would be the apostles. They would represent the wave loaves, a finished product. You remember the scripture that when the disciple asked, he said, Master, we follow you, what we will get?
Mm.
He said, they will sit upon 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right.
Was it a joke he making with them?
Not at all.
I won't say no more on that right now.
Mm.
But whatever Christ said, he means.
Yeah.
So they represent the full complement. The apostles represent the full complement of the full fruit harvest.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me move the chart a bit. I'll be a little more faster with the moving of the chart. Right. So like we say, we using the literal harvest to show a spiritual harvest. And where we get all this information, Leviticus 23, that the brethren say nailed to the cross.
So the outline and the direction is all nailed to the cross.
Right.
And what we're using now came from the enemy.
Right.
So where are we going with that?
Okay. So
hold on. We covered a lot. We didn't check in with Sophia to see how she's doing.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Any questions?
No, I'm keeping up.
Okay, good.
All right, let me take a little break here to get some water.
Okay.
I'm not touching anything. I'm leaving it just so.
Okay.
Or should I stop the recording?
Yeah.
All right. I'll get back on.
Build your house on the truth.
Right. So what we have to notice, remember I said there were 2 literal harvests with 3 spiritual sacraments. What that means is the literal harvest comes with a worship service. Right. So we have the spring harvest with spring worship services. The services in the spring was Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and Feast of the Wave Sheaf. There are 3 services in the spring. In connection with the literal harvest.
Right. So the harvest and the worship went together.
It went together because
throughout the year.
Right, for the year. Because it points forward souls to be gathered.
Right.
And it's showing you how and who are the souls that will be gathered in the spring harvest. So that is why it is important when he said, observe the month of Abib. Because there's a worship service to go along with the spring harvest.
Right.
Right. So we have in the month of Abib, according to Leviticus 12. Not Leviticus, this will be Exodus 12 says, this is the beginning of months for you. And Leviticus 16 says, observe the month of Abib. Right, so we have the Passover in the month of Abib, and which also you have the wave sheaf offering in the month in the spring season. We know the wave sheaf pointed to Christ and those who rose with him. Now, since he died and resurrected, he becomes a living type of both the dead and the living. Am I making any sense?
Say it again. Since
as he died and resurrected,
yes,
he's not the chief of the dead only now, but of both the dead and the living, because he's ever living before the Father.
Right.
And those who arose with him are alive in the heavenly sanctuary. So they are tokens of the first fruit harvest.
Deriving from the first
one
Pentecost.
stalk of grain that they presented before the Lord. This was the service.
Right.
You cut one stalk of grain in the spring and you wave it below before the Lord, pointing forward to fruits to be gathered in the first fruit harvest. Remember, this was a service in Leviticus 23. Which we are saying ended on the cross. So if the service ended on the cross, then the whole spring worship become meaningless. So what we saying that there's no first fruit harvest again.
Doesn't make no sense.
Right. Also, you had to offer a new meat offering after the 7 weeks, which point to the wave loaves, which represent the apostles who received Pentecost after the 7 Sabbaths. They are the wave loaves. Remember, it is said that all these ceremonies is types of souls to be gathered, or it points forward to a greater deliverance. So the apostles represent the wave loaves. In other words, you take the wheat, the raw material, or the barley, and you make bread and make a presentation before the Lord.
It's a finished product that you're making in
Finished
presentation
product.
to God.
So the disciples are the finished product of the first fruit harvest. Right. Which is a type of the first fruit of the living, which is the 144,000. You understanding the connection?
Yeah. It's the first gathering or the first reaping of the representation of the harvest in a full year was, for us now that we can look back,
Right.
is of the dead. And now that we know that there's a judgment of the living, there's another harvest of the living, because you already had the one of the dead. Now we must have the one of the living. So again, we must meet the requirement so that we can be reaped and be as that showbread.
Right.
You know?
So he is showing you salvation in type and antitype. And he used the literal harvest year to bring about this truth.
Right.
Remember I said the gospel dispensation is likened unto a year. Right. So now you have the 144,000 now becomes a type of the wave loaves of the living.
Yep.
You don't need a next wave sheaf, because Christ is the type of both of the dead and the living. Those who rose with him are in the heavenly sanctuary, was already presented as trophies for the first fruit harvest. Right. So we will have wave sheaf of the dead, not wave sheaf, wave loaves of the dead, which will be the apostles, and you will have wave loaves of the living, which will be the 144,000.
Right.
That takes care of the first fruit harvest. Right, so you have a Pentecost to close off, or a celebration to close off the first fruit harvest. That's where the apostles received the outpouring at that time. How much thousands were saved, were baptized in one day? 300,000 baptized in one day, and many were added. And likewise, in the second, in this harvest now for the living, you'll have 144,000 saved in the first fruit harvest.
Right.
The 144,000 will represent the wave loaves. You have any questions so far with that? Anybody? We had feasts. Remember the services for the first month. Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, wave sheaf, wave loaves. This is salvation in the antitype. This is what it is talking about, the different feasts. They had to do that then. This is the antitype of it today. This is how we understand the plan of salvation through this symbolism here. So that close off, this is what close off the first fruit harvest of the dead and the first fruit harvest of the living. The 120 disciples and the 144,000 for the living. 120 covered those of the dead, and the 144,000 will be the first fruit harvest of the living. Remember in the first fruit harvest, he say, and lo, a great multitude after. But the 144,000, he call them first fruit. This is how we have to understand that. All right, so as they had, remember what I was saying earlier, you had 2 literal harvests and 3 spiritual sacraments. So you had the 2 sacraments already. Wave sheaf and wave loaves. You had wave loaves at the dead and wave loaves at the living. Tell me if I'm not making sense, so we could stop and go it over properly, right? And the wave sheaf pointed to Christ and those who rose with him. You get that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So Pentecost close off the first fruit harvest. And so the outpouring of the latter rain will close the first fruit harvest for the living, the 144,000. But what happens now? The rain, the rain that caused the first fruit harvest to ripe was the early rain was the doctrines of Christ and the apostles. They brought that harvest to full maturity then. That would ripen the first grain. What will ripen is the for the living now. Because remember, what does Joel say? Since you will find Joel, I think it's Joel chapter 2, 28. Let me see if I get it here. Actually, the time rain in the time of the latter rain. Sorry.
Is Joel what?
I think it's Joel chapter 2, 28. All right.
And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions.
All right. That's gone a little too far up. I wanted to looking for the part where I say, actually the Lord reign in the time. All right, I'll find it. 23. Verse 23.
Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God. For he had given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month.
Right. Now, the first month is of vital importance. Right. So we're supposed to know when the first month is. Because in the first month, or what is symbolized to by the first month. So while you have a literal first month, you also have a symbol for the first month. First, let's talk about the symbol for the first month. The judgment for the church is in the first month. The judgment for the world is the second month.
Okay.
The flood came in the second month. And it fall on the very days, or it coincides with the first month. Let me see if I find a chart with that so we could follow this. I'll have to come out of this here. Okay, clear this. All right, I move this here.
The flood, the type, and the antitype?
Yeah, the flood type.
The second month, the 17th day, Genesis 7:11, 7 verse 11 and 12. Second month, 10th day, Genesis 7, 1 through 4.
I find it take a little while to come up now. I don't know why. All right. Right. Okay. What day did Noah enter the ark?
10th day.
Of the second month.
Yeah, second month, 10th day.
Right. So the lamb was separated on the 10th day of the first month. And Noah went into the ark on the 10th day of the second month. So when we're doing this study, which some other time we will do, you will see how the time always, what you would correlate?
Coincide.
Or coincides. And it's the same thing you will see with the sacred year. How the Passover services and Feast of Tabernacles, all the dates coincides with each other. Right. So God does nothing by chance.
Everything lines up.
Yes, everything must line up. So the second month, the flood came. The first month was judgment for the church. So just as how Israel came out of Egypt in the first month, so the purification of the church most likely will be in the first month.
Yeah, I was thinking that as we were speaking.
And I was saying you must know when first month is.
Okay.
So if the
That'll
Lord
be our
himself
next study.
tell you when the first month is, why are we going to January?
Right.
We have next month is March. Around the 20th is the vernal equinox, which shows the beginning of the year. How we end up in January again?
Romans.
So Satan throw in a monkey wrench, as it were, throw you off course so you will never worship God at the time he tell you to do so. as Seventh-day Adventists, we say we having the Lord's Supper. That was supposed to be once a year, you know, because if that service was a type or a memorial, it's supposed to be at the exact time.
Right.
But we have it 4 times for the year. But never upon the date that God said to do it. How is that possible? But it's strange. We have this Lord's Supper every time the Luciferian having their blood sacrifice.
On their day.
On the very same time, Andy. Well, I ain't going into that right now. But I'm just letting you know that. So when the month of Abib come around, we supposed to have, you should observe the month of Abib. So on that day would be the new moon, which will be a full moon.
Right.
We normally say new moon is the first little crescent you see coming up. I could never understand how on the day of creation, God will make a piece of moon. And tell you it was good.
Right.
Something is wrong with that theory.
Right.
Right. So every time you have an equinox, you would have a full moon. It happened last year. It's going to happen again this year. It happens every year. At the equinox, you just have a full moon, which is a sign that this is the beginning of the year. So if God tells you to observe the month of Abib, so you will have the full moon, new moon worship, and then on you will have the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days. Why we can't have that? Why we instead choose to have nothing? Although God have plans to show you how we saving the first fruit according to Leviticus 23. If it was nailed to the cross, why you have these ceremonies pointing forward to souls to be gathered?
I would say that the enemy has placed a lot of things in our way to prevent us or push us down a path away from God. And we have to see what it is and do the research in order to get back, because he has thrown us off course. We need to get back on course. So seeking information that will put us back on course. Don't continue with what he set up, because then all worship is not going to be to the one or the ever-living God. It will be to him.
Yeah, but this is what it is. Because Ellen White says in early writing, page 15, is the devil make us believe that all the ordinances and sacrifices ended at the cross.
Right.
But we came up with this bright idea. Ellen White didn't do it. But our devil didn't do it, so we're not going to do it. Could you imagine?
Let's just ask for a moment. If we was doing what we're supposed to do, how come Christ hasn't returned and removed us from here, from this curse?
Definitely. I always ask the question, okay, if not doing it is the right thing, then you're supposed to be in heaven already. Why are we still here?
Right.
Because everybody not doing it. So that means I was doing the right thing.
Right.
Okay. All right. So these are the spring harvest worship services, or call it the 3 spiritual sacraments that was added to the literal harvest. So it's showing that you must have worship service at the time of these literal harvests. You must have a worship service in accordance. So this is why I might say that we must have holy convocations.
Right.
Am I making any sense here?
That's what the word says.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's irrelevant if we making sense. What does God say to do?
Right.
What is the requirement? Let it make sense to the individual when they study and ask God for understanding.
Right.
Yeah. I also think once you get to the point of taking part in the Holy Convocation, there's no way you can go back to a certain life.
Right.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you would have done all that work to get here. There's no way you can go back to
Yeah.
a worship that's not true.
No,
It's
could you
like,
imagine? Sorry, go ahead.
to me, it's literally like you was blind before. Now you receive sight. And you asking, can I go back to being blind, please? Who does that?
Okay.
That is madness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, these sacraments, right? They have 120 in the first fruit harvest.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second year have 144,000.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little counting here. For the animals that go into the ark in Noah day, that was a Pentecost.
Mm. How so?
So he preached for 120 years.
Okay. Yes.
Right. And at the end of that, the animals walk in the ark by order, 2 by 2, 7 by 7.
Mm.
They left wherever they were and went into the ark.
Mm.
So it takes the Spirit of God to do that. So that was a Pentecost then, 120. So we use the same 120. So since there was a 120 on the day of Pentecost, we measure that 120 by 2 will give you 240.
Mm.
Pentecost in Noah day and Pentecost in the time of the apostles will give you 240. We just use the numbers here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Bible time, we say a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We have a 5-fold message in Matthew 20. Early in the morning, the 3rd hour, the 6th hour, the 9th hour, and at the 11th hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the day period. So we have a 5-fold message for this day period. The gospel dispensation. Right. Okay. So we have 1 for the dispensation that passed. So that brings us to 6. So we call that 600 using numbers.
Mm-hmm.
600, if you multiply 240 by 600, you got 144,000.
Mm.
Could we consider that mathematical coincidence or design?
No. That's a God design.
A design. So that in the first fruit harvest, for the living, you will have only 144,000 in that harvest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So those who believe there'll be more have a different Bible.
Mm.
Those who think that they will have more than 144,000 saved in the whole food harvest, they're in for a surprise. Many will weep and gnash their teeth because the only chance that we have to be saved is today, and we must hear the message for the judgment of the living.
Mm.
So he bring about this truth in type in the ceremonial harvest, that which most of us say was nailed to the cross.
Mm.
Now, if you say that was nailed to the cross, what you have just done, you know what, now thinking about that, you have closed off the only way that you could have been saved.
Right.
What else will save you?
Mm.
All right. So this takes care of the spring worship and the spring harvest. You have any questions on that so far? You have the spring, in the summer you receive Pentecost. Right.
Mm.
So we cover the wave loaves and the wave sheaf. Feast of Unleavened Bread, we're supposed to have 7 days of worship. 7 days in the spring, giving praise and thanks to God for all the blessings, for the bounties that we have received. Normally, the church just have a week of prayer. Scrap the week of prayer and have that same worship service at the time God appointed it.
Right.
From the 15th to the 21st.
Mm. What is the harm in having a gathering together and having a week of prayer, or just a gathering of these people around this time? Who can point out, like, insurrection, if you will, that we transpire against God's word by doing this?
We rather please the devil.
Mm.
We rather please the devil and the papacy.
Right.
Because they are the only one would be offended by such a worship.
Right.
All right. So we're going now to the other harvest and the worship for that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember in Revelation 7, after you get the first fruit, you have a second fruit, which is the great multitude from all nations.
Right.
So how is that portrayed in Leviticus? So you look at Leviticus, what let me see from where to where you deal with the Feast of Tabernacles. Leviticus 23. Okay. Feast of Weeks, Feast of Trumpet. Now, Feast of Trumpet. I can't say much on the trumpets because not much is said on the trumpets. Trumpets are supposed to be warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't have much to say on the trumpet. I've heard it likened to the warnings that came before it under Miller. You know, I can't say it yet for myself yet. All right?
Mm-hmm.
But we could deal with the Day of Atonement. This day in which we are in at the present time is a period of time whereby we're supposed to be living without spot. Now we have 2 notable times that we're supposed to observe as church members. On the Day of Atonement, if we have any sin, we'll be cut off from the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
We will not have no part in the Feast of Tabernacles. For Passover, if we didn't apply the blood, we would have no part on the day of Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then, this was supposed to be a one-day event, the Day of Atonement. So we are actually in that day, that period of one day.
Mm-hmm.
Those who have not confessed the sin or still have sin unforgiven will be cut off from the congregation. It's not a day today that you could be sinning and repenting. I've said that many times. We're supposed to be living the overcomer's life. We're supposed to be already triumph over sin. We're supposed to be waiting for when Christ comes out from the sanctuary
Mm-hmm.
to bless the congregation. Now, I think what has happened, you know, here the conference of the church talking about that part of this service in the heavenly sanctuary.
Mm.
We stop at the atonement and never go no further, not realizing that he must come out. That is not the last service.
Right.
The last service in the heavenly sanctuary is the Feast of Tabernacles, where all the saints, Feast of Tabernacles represent all the saints, or put it this way, all the crop for the year comes in the autumn, whereby you have a big harvest, you have a thanksgiving to God and so forth. So that represents now the great multitude which no man could number.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, we just said earlier, the first fruit harvest points to the 120 disciples,
Right.
and the 144,000 of the dead and of the living.
Mm-hmm.
Those who die in the Lord, who will come up in the resurrection of the just, Thessalonian resurrection, they are the Feast of Tabernacles for the dead, souls who will be saved under that period.
Mm-hmm.
And those who will be alive will be the great multitude which no man can number. You have to understand it's two distinct groups.
Two
Those
distinct
who die
crops.
and those who never taste death.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I'm saying two distinct crops.
Right. Now, no, not crops. Type. One for the dead and one for the living. You have the great multitude, those who will die in the Lord from Adam time coming down, who will be resurrected.
Right.
Right. They will represent like the Feast of Tabernacles, who gathered for the year crop finish, but of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making any sense?
No, I was just thinking. You call them types. One for the dead and one for the living.
Yeah, but okay. And we had Christ represented, let me go back again. Christ represented both the living and the dead as the wave chief.
Right.
Okay. The 120 represented the wave loaves of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And the 144,000 will represent the wave loaves of the living.
Right.
Type and antitype. This covers the first month harvest. The first harvest. For the second harvest, now you will also have living and dead.
Right.
Those who will be resurrected as righteous, they will represent the Feast of Tabernacles of all the dead that were righteous. Remember, these services and harvest points to fruits to be gathered.
Right.
This is what it was pointing to. What Israel was doing there was the shadow of the truth today.
You're right in saying that it's two different types. But what I meant by saying it's two different crops only because it's two separate times. It's not, okay, you get in the first fruit crop and the second fruit crop. You're not getting at the same time. It's two different times.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I understand.
So that's why I said it's two different crops. Well, I understand that it's two different types, one of the dead, one of the living. Yeah. It's also two different crops. So I say that only because they have a lot of people out here that's saying that the great multitude and the first fruits is just one group of people.
Right.
So to separate that and make sure people understand that it's two different separate times, two different crops, while it's still a type of the dead and the antitype of the living.
You know, in volume 6, I think it's page 393, it says that the gospel is in precept in the Leviticus. So if you want to understand the gospel, you must go to the Leviticus. You can't teach the gospel without the Leviticus.
Right.
Or the Leviticus without the gospel. The both goes together.
Right.
So in the last harvest, the final harvest, you'll have a type for the dead and a type for the living. So the great multitude that the 144,000 will gather will represent the Feast of Tabernacles for the living. And those who come up in the Thessalonian resurrection represent the Feast of Tabernacles of the dead. The whole point is souls that are being gathered at different times for different reasons, fulfilling the type of the worship service and ceremony and the literal harvest that was taking place in Israel.
They're all tied together.
Right. So again, if you're saying that these services ended at the cross, then you cannot use them today as type pointing about fruits to be gathered. I mean, you confuse the whole thing.
It's like you had an explanation and then you cut off most of the explanation and you just, it's over. So now where do you go from there?
According, and we see as according to Isaiah 66, verse 8, it shows a nation will be born in a day. Now, what is happening here? Where is the service in the Bible now that we could say that will take place during that time? Now, I say it, right? But where's the scripture that shows that there will be a service in harmony with the reaping of the souls or the crop for the Feast of Tabernacles? The only place you're going to find all of that, the service that will take place, is in Ezekiel. We could see start from, you have to study Ezekiel chapter 40 right up to 48. The main service is showing it in Ezekiel. Ezekiel 45, verse 18 to 25 will show that you'll have a service in the first month and you'll have a worship service in the 7th month, just as it was done in the past. Some worry about, now remember it's the Bible you're reading. We didn't write the Bible. None of us wrote the Bible. Whatever God put there, he put that for himself. So he's showing that there will be a cleansing. Remember when the service was over in the type, when the the just before after the Day of Atonement is over, there was a special worship service to take place, whereby the sanctuary must be cleansed with blood. The Bible says with all the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. So the sanctuary was supposed to be cleansed with the blood. You take the blood, sprinkle it on the altar, sprinkle it on the mercy seat, and I think even sprinkle the priest too. So there's a special cleansing. And at that time, the sins would have been laid on the scapegoat and led away. That service ain't finished yet. We don't even mention it. So at this time, when after the Day of Atonement, you will have this similar service, and it is recorded here in Ezekiel 46, where the temple will be cleansed, the sanctuary cleansed, and so on with blood. So those who are arguing that have to go and argue with God, not me. I did not write Ezekiel chapters. So this is how God planned. Yeah, this is how God planned to do his thing. We just had to go along with it. Another point, right. All right, and this is how all these sins will be cleansed, so they will meet the Lord in the air. Nobody is going to resurrect from the grave and go to heaven straight. You must, or the problem is, because as Seventh-day Adventists, we don't believe that God will have a kingdom. We have a problem in understanding a lot of scriptures. For instance, let me go back. The scriptures say, and in Isaiah chapter 2, we say Isaiah the gospel prophet. Hear what he says in Isaiah chapter 2. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountain, and all nations shall flow unto it. Now, we don't believe that. Most Adventists believe that God will not have no kingdom here on earth. Although the scriptures tell you that he will have his people in their own land. He's going to gather you from the four corners of the earth and bring in your own land. All of that is what the scripture is saying. Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel 36, Zechariah 14, Zechariah 13, Micah 2. I mean, all the scriptures, Daniel 2 says, and it shall come to pass. No, Daniel 2 says. Yeah. That, how Daniel 2 go again?
About the one that says,
the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established. No, not that one. Daniel 2 is saying that in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom.
Right.
And imagine Christ come and tell you how to pray. You pray, thy kingdom come, I will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But you're not expecting anything like that to happen on earth.
What about the people that said, come, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord's house?
Yes.
And he will teach us of our ways and our statutes.
And Micah chapter 4.
Yeah.
We don't believe the scriptures. Christ himself said, fear not, little flock. It is of your Father's good intention to give you the kingdom. And in his prayer, he tells you how to pray. Thy kingdom come, that will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So before we go to heaven, we must be doing the will of God here on earth first.
Right.
So God will have a kingdom. What Adam lost must be regained with the commandment-keeping people of God here on earth. The scripture says, unto the daughter of Zion is given the first dominion. What Adam lost, we must regain in the time of restitution.
What God started, he must finish.
Because that is why Christ died, to restore all things. When he have to present us to the Father, he have to be perfect, without spot, wrinkle, or any such thing. This is what the kingdom is for. You will be cleansed from all sin. Things that, we have to resist sin right now unto blood. But the damage that sin have done that have to be removed before you being presented to the Father.
Okay.
And this will take place in the kingdom. But because we don't believe, blindness has come upon us and we have nothing else to hold on to.
Mm.
It's so much that we could see. How long have we been on this study?
2 hours, 21 minutes,
Pause.
15 seconds.
All right, so we'll have a pause on this study. Because I've said a lot. And I'm sorry for those who say that these services was nailed to the cross. I don't know what on earth will be the remedy for sin for them.
Well, we have settled enough. It's enough for them to go check it out for themselves, do a little research, and figure out if what we're saying is truth or not. And if it's not the truth, then come back with
bring forth your
something
strong
from. Yeah.
Yep.
So
we
could stop the recording.
Right there.
Yeah.